Hello, welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Kato. Eyes have been on the Middle East this past weekend as U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to attack Iran once again, only to change his mind and hold back on his decision, subject to a deal being struck. Now, Trump has signaled this may take place on Monday. But broader tensions in the Middle East are on the rise. Palestinians in Gaza continue to be killed, and Lebanon and Israel meet in Rome this week for yet another round of talks. To get insight on what this week may bring, we're joined by Joshua Burgin, founder of the Alliance for Global Security, to give his insights on the latest developments in the region. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Maria, good to be with you this morning.
So there have been some overnight developments suggesting negotiations may take place between the U.S. and Iran. Now, I'd like to begin by bringing in a soundbite from President Trump.
I was asked to by Saudi Arabia, by UAE, and by Qatar, and by Iran. We were all set to go, just about at this time right now, and it would have been a massive attack. We were all set to go, but when the allies ask to call it off, you got to sort of say, well, let's see. And the reason they asked is I think there's a deal. There's a deal on Hormuz, and then there will be a deal on the nuclear, or you might call it the denuclearization of Iran. I call it the denuclearization of Iran. Now what we're doing is we're talking to them in the form of a negotiation. It begins tomorrow afternoon, and we'll see if it's true. I'd love to do that, save a lot of lives.
Now, Joshua, what are the chances of the successful outcome of these negotiations?
Well, I would personally be a bit skeptical. Not to say that it can't happen, but both sides are sort of negotiating with sort of the threat of attacks. Both sides are executing here. It's promising that there was at least a request to dial this back, give room for the talks to engage. But I'm concerned, since both seem to be really quick to resort to weaponry as part of the negotiation, that we're not quite there yet. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that this is the time in which it will come together. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if we see them back to exchanging blows again within the next few days.
Okay, now I wanted to get your insight on the events of this past weekend. Would you say that to some extent we can see Israel and the U.S. Joining forces a little bit more recently to escalate the conflict once again?
On which front? I mean, there's so many things happening in the Middle East right now, as already alluded to at the top of the hour. Obviously, I think it's painful for both sides not to resolve this. There's clear and obvious risk for President Trump and his party, as much of the pain related to the ongoing war, cost of fuel, the Strait of Hormuz continue to be sort of open and closed. Never has there been stabilization yet on insurance costs for shipping. I think it's really in everybody's incentive to bring something together and get it done. So the idea that Israel and the United States are collaborating to move the markers forward is fairly straightforward.
And in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, what are the chances of it actually being fully opened when Tehran is accusing Washington of psychological warfare?
Well, I mean, the real challenge is there's open and then there's insured. And just because it's open and no one is going to, and nothing's impeding the movement of ships, doesn't mean that you can get insurance. I think the real question is, at what point does insurance return to where shipping can come through knowing that it's fully insured? And I think we're some ways off from that, even if ship movements are unimpeded. This is the dilemma this is what I see as the long-term question mark. It's not just whether Hormuz is open, it's whether it's insurable. And I still think that no matter what happens, it requires a formal deal and at least a few weeks, if not a couple of months, to stabilize into a place where insurers are willing to come back and own risk of the vehicles that are commuting through there.
Now, I wanted to ask you to give us a little bit of insight of what is happening in the U.S. Obviously, the midterms are coming up. Trump is in a difficult situation. We sense that he's frustrated and he's got himself tangled up. The U.S. and Israel are forced to present a united front. But what about Trump's commitments back at home?
Well, the commitment to not engage in a new war is obviously something he set aside. This was a major feature of his campaigns. That said, I'm not convinced that much of his general electorate, his base, will hold his feet to the fire on that. But nevertheless, votes in the swing, and the Democrats will use this against him pretty harshly. Everybody's feeling the pain of the gas pump. Everyone's feeling the pain as there's also threats to potentially shut down the ability to run shipping through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal. All of this has impacts that could be described as inflationary, but certainly painful costs at the pump and at the retail stand for people in the United States. Thus, Trump is clearly mindful of this, as is his campaign team.
Now, we've seen the impact of the conflict on the global economy and the oil prices. And we don't want to play it down. Equally, we don't see this conflict, this war ending anytime soon. What is the current influence or the level of fluctuation that we can expect to see on oil prices and the broader global economy?
I think much of the major hit has been absorbed since the Strait was effectively been closed. I mean, prices of energy dropped by like 4% this morning on hopes of a deal, but that's not prices went up by something like 25% or even more, given the initial closure. Remember, this is not the same war as the conflict between Russia and Ukraine right now, where civilians are being killed every single day. This is largely a regional power and a global power exchanging blows towards a negotiated settlement. I don't see anyone wanting to sustain this. I don't see the United States wanting to put sustained boots on the ground. So at the end of the day, it's a contest of wills. Is this war? Yes, it is. Is it the sort of war that I see running the risk of massive escalation, or running in parallel to the sort of 4 or 5 year that Russia has found itself in Ukraine? I don't think so. I think it's ultimately a prolonged negotiation. As already cited, the president himself cited Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Israel, other actors in the neighborhood are asking for this to resolve, and I think everyone has will for it to do so, even if it's a little difficult getting there.
Now, I wanted to turn to the broader Middle East tensions. Sunday reports suggested that Israel forces have killed at least 17 Palestinians in Gaza, among them several children. But there is a disarmament deal with Hamas on the way that the U.S. is working on. Tell us about where Israel stands on this so far.
Israel's been pretty consistent. They want to see never again mean never again. Unfortunately, some of Israel's adversaries within the region negotiate from the standpoint of weakness, but have never sort of eliminated their goal of eliminating the very idea of the Israeli state. So to this end, everyone appears to be working towards an objective, a positive outcome. There are consistent flare-ups. Obviously, there are many who have concerns about how Israel prosecutes its conflict with Gaza and Palestinian leadership, more to point Hamas leadership. But nevertheless, I do think there is a general will, an objective to make this issue go away as well, to be settled in a more finalized way.
But how likely do you think that Israel is actually going to agree to this?
I think Israel will absolutely agree to it if indeed Hamas has surrendered all of its weapons. If Israel believes that it's not going to face another October 7th like attack, or bombs going off in buses, I think Israel is quite willing to do a deal.
I suppose one thing that we can say in regards to President Trump's leadership is that we don't actually see President Trump's plan for peace, security and regeneration for Gaza as he promised. What are your thoughts on that?
We've all watched President Trump for a long time. And you remember he was going to settle the conflict with Ukraine in a day or a week. It drags on. Candidate Trump is profoundly different than execution, and we're just going to have to continue to watch how it unfolds, what really exists there, what's doable in the big ball of sort of historic conflicts in the current moment.
Now, we have a new round of Israel-Lebanon talks that is scheduled for August 4th. That's tomorrow. What do you think that the agenda will actually bring to the table? I mean, Lebanon is a very tricky part of the Middle East. I personally think that it's an area that's often forgotten in the broader I suppose, the discussion of Middle East tensions. What do you think can be done to ensure progress in the right direction? Just a reminder to our viewers that these discussions will actually take place in Rome and will last 2 days.
So let's remember that Lebanon was once an amazing haven. It was referred to as the Paris or the France of the Middle East. It was a relatively modern society until Hamas and what you might describe as religious radicals came in and took over. In terms of its political leadership, the very fact that there is continuing conflict, or there has been continued conflicts back and forth between Israel and Hamas within Lebanon is fairly obvious given the overall sort of regional conflict. I am optimistic, however, that Israel's negotiations with Lebanon will see a turn of the corner because I think the implications of reining in Hamas in both Lebanon and in Gaza they hinge upon each other. Lebanon wants to have relief. Israel wants Lebanon to have relief, and I'm optimistic given the fact that it's in Rome, that they're at a place that is historic. I'm optimistic that this is going to yield a productive outcome. What that exactly looks like, we won't know until they've emerged from closed doors and probably some weeks or even months from now.
Well, we have some details in regards to what will be discussed. We know that it will include expanding the pilot zone process, resolving all outstanding border issues, and working on a comprehensive peace and security agreement. Obviously, the last point doesn't surprise me. That sounds like a rather general point. But in terms of resolving all outstanding border issues, do you think that you could give us some details on what that actually might mean in practice?
To me, both of these things sound so broad and so open-ended, which is why I said to start with that we won't really know until weeks or even months from now which exact point of conflict on sort of the border question. They're going to go and they're going to resolve. They're going to have conversation. I don't expect they're going to resolve everything. I expect that it's a good sign that they are talking. But the notion that they're going to come out with a comprehensive solution, it to me seems like a pipe dream.
Okay. Joshua Burgin, thank you so much for joining us, the founder for the Alliance of Global Security. Thanks so much for joining us on the show once again.
Great to see you today, Maria.
And that is a wrap for World Talks. Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure that you keep yourselves updated with TVP World. Goodbye.